Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Preseason 9 League of Legends video. Today I'll be covering who I think are the top 5 support champions in League of Legends. This is going to be a list of champions I think are fairly effective in solo queue at the moment, so they're going to be champions that are great at finding picks or they add a lot of damage in team fights with their AoE damage. Of course, there's nothing wrong with going a traditional support like say Janna, Soraka, or Sona, but usually they are more team reliant than these champions in this list. These are champions that have more potential to carry games, and I think they're fantastic picks to learn during the preseason. If you see any champion mentioned in this video you'd like to give a shot, head over to u.gg who are partnered with me on this video. All you have to do is head over to the website, type in the name of the champion you want information on, and you'll get a full breakdown on anything you need to know like the recommended runes, summoners, skill order, and item build. So for the best builds in 30 seconds or less, head over to u.gg or click my link below. But now let's start this video by looking at one of our runners-up, Leona.
To face these veiled terrors, we must know them.
Leona makes it into this video as a runner-up because she's a champion with a lot of pick potential. She's a very tanky champion that brings a lot of crowd control into the lane and can use both of these to get her lane snowballing. She can activate her W ability for its increased resistances and also to add some burst damage into her combos. Her QE and ultimate are all forms of crowd control which can allow her teammates to follow up and add their damage and usually net some pretty easy kills. This gives her a really solid engage, and she can also use these abilities as well to disengage if she does need to. Leona then also has a pretty strong presence in that bottom lane as well because people will not want to go anywhere near her. If they get close enough to Leona where she can E on top of them, usually that's going to result in a bad situation for the enemy. She's also really strong in this meta because she works with most of the bot lane carries out there. If her ally is very immobile, she has multiple ways to peel the target off of them, and if they instead want to go for early kills because they have a lot of damage, she can hold people in place yet again and get them kills. She's also a champion that doesn't have a lot of mobility and also no lane sustain. This means you're usually going to struggle against those poke lanes because you don't have ways of getting your health back, and you do have a pretty risky playstyle as well because either you jump in there and get kills, or you just jump in there and die because you can't escape afterwards. She is however a pretty strong champion, just not strong enough to make it into the top 5. Coming in as our last runner-up, we have got Alistar.
Nothing can hold me back.
Alistar makes it into this video as his second runner-up because he's got some really solid crowd control and great roams. This is great in this meta because not only can you get your own bottom lane snowballing, but you can roam around into the middle or the top lane and even the enemy jungle and get some kills for your team that way as well. Alistar of course has a really solid engage as well, which comes from his W and his Q combo. You can use this to easily get to a target and pop them up and then follow up with your E ability afterwards for another stun. This does some pretty decent damage in the early game and can hold a target in place for a pretty long duration. You're then a champion that can also snowball in tower dives as well because you do have a very tanky ultimate, so you can take a lot of tower shots as you crowd control the enemy. This can give your squishier teammates a lot of time to fight under the tower safely as you tank it so they can kill the targets and then you can escape afterwards. You are however a champion that's pretty bad in the lane phase. You do offer a lot of nice crowd control in team fights and roams, but during the lane phase it can be pretty tough, especially against a lot of poke. Alistar is not that hard of a champion to play, but you do need to know how to roam around the map effectively and get lane snowballing with your nice crowd control. If you can pull this off throughout the full game, not only can you get your bot lane ahead, you can get other lanes ahead as well, which of course is a really nice win condition to have when you're playing a support champion. Either way though, despite those really solid roams and crowd controlling, he doesn't have the best lane phase and he's not that fantastic for damage of course, so he doesn't make it quite into the top 5. Alright, now we officially start the top 5 with number 5, Pike.
Kill with one eye open.
So Pike gets number 5 on this list because he is a pretty strong assassin support. He does of course get his stealth from his W, so you can use this to move around the rift and then either follow it up by landing a hook from the bone skewer he has from his Q, or he can jump on top of a target with his phantom undertow and stun them. Since Pike is an assassin, even though you are a support champion, you will still be going for a lethality build, so you'll definitely be dishing out that damage. Your ultimate is then a really solid execute that resets whenever you kill a champion with it. Just like as if you were playing a Darius, if you do get into the middle of a team fight and a lot of enemies are low, you can use your ultimate over and over again and clean up. That's of course going to be a pretty damn nice thing to have on your support champion because something like a Janna definitely cannot do that. Pike is a relatively high skill cap champion however because your Q will take a good amount of time to get used to and your E has to be lined up with your starting location to actually stun targets. He is a support champion that definitely has to be roaming around the map as well because that is one of the most powerful parts of his kit. With good map awareness and excellent use of your W ability, you will be able to roam around the map unseen and help snowball other lanes as well. Pike has the potential to be one of the best support champions out there, but if you're kind of just sitting in lane missing your hooks and not really roaming or doing anything else, well, he's a pretty shitty champion. How good of a champion Pike is completely up to you. Coming in at number 4, we've got Blitzcrank.
Fired up and ready to serve.
Blitzcrank takes the number 4 spot primarily because of his rocket grab. If he can land this consistently throughout the lane phase and in teamfights, your team is going to have a massive advantage. Of course, if you're pulling in something like an Alistar or an Alawi, then yeah, probably not, but as long as you can pull those squishy targets in towards your team, you're going to set them up for success. There is something special about Blitzcrank though, that even if you do lose that early lane phase and you lose the mid game even, if you make it to the late game and you're at least somewhat even, if you can find a pull on something like a Vayne or a Kog'Maw and your teammates can kill them, you gave your team basically a free teamfight win. You'll then enter a team fight in a 5v4 and they're not going to have their AD carry or whatever carry they did have in the bottom lane, and of course you're going to pretty much always come out on top. Of course landing your grabs more consistently is going to make the game a lot easier, but if you can land them when you count, you're at least doing what you need to. Now not only can you pull in the targets, but you can pop them up with your E ability and also silence and do a lot of damage to them with your ultimate. This damaging and silencing ultimate is also an AoE as well, so you can jump in the middle of team fights and silence multiple targets. This makes him a really solid pick against something that channels their ultimate like Katarina, because you can stop their ultimate with your Q, E, and ultimate. You are going to struggle against champions that are very mobile or have spell shields like Morgana, Sivir, or Nocturne, so you do kind of have some troubles in matchups, but as long as you can land at least some grabs when those abilities are down, you'll still be successful. Coming in at number 3, we've got Brand.
Ready to set the world on fire.
Brand makes it onto this list at number 3 because he's got a ridiculous amount of AoE damage and even percent HP damage on top of it. That means if the enemy team is at least somewhat clumped up, he will be able to destroy them with his AoE damage and even those tanky targets at the same time because of the percent HP damage. He is a champion that does a lot of harassment throughout the lane phase and even scales well into the late game as well, so he's pretty much good at every stage of the game. He's also got limited hard matchups as well. He usually struggles against things that do have longer range than him, but against everything else he absolutely destroys them. Or well, at least you have the potential to. He is a champion that is pretty skill shot reliant and he must land multiple abilities in succession in order to stun his enemies, so it is pretty important to land abilities over and over again. Even though Dark Harvest was previously nerfed, it does still work great on Brand because of your passive's burn. It still works with that ability. In teamfights, this can also proc multiple times if you are killing targets with your AoE damage, so it's an all-around fantastic keystone and is one of the reasons Brand is so strong at the moment. He doesn't have the most utility out there and he doesn't have the greatest mobility, but as long as you can position correctly and land your skill shots, you will do a lot of damage in teamfights, which is why you take the number 3 spot. Next, coming in at number 2, we've got Zyra.
Feel the thorns embrace.
Zyra takes our number 2 spot because she's got some really good pick potential and a great teamfight as well. Your E ability can have a 2-second root, and when you combine it with your plant's damage and of course your bot lane carries, you have the potential to kill targets pretty easily within that duration. It's also got a pretty long range at 1100, so it's great at finding picks throughout the game as well. These plants give her some really solid damage and she can dominate that lane phase by herself. Sometimes it's to the point where her teammate can just safely farm the lane and she can deal with the 2 enemies by herself. Her ultimate is also an incredible ability. Any of your plants in the zone will be enraged and do a lot more damage and also become a lot tankier. It's also a really big circle ability as well, and anybody inside will be damaged, and if they stay inside for long enough, they'll also be knocked up. Because of this really high damage and knock-up, it's one of the best team-fighting ultimates that can come from a support champion. She of course is a champion that doesn't bring anything to the lane like a shield or a heal, instead she brings a really solid root and excellent teamfight. As long as you can land your abilities, the lane phase isn't going to be that hard for you and you'll definitely shine in teamfights with a well-placed ultimate. And taking our number 1 spot, we have got Thresh.
What delightful agony we shall inflict.
Thresh takes the number 1 spot because he's got an incredibly strong kit. Both his E and his Q ability are great at finding picks and can crowd control targets for a pretty long duration. He does have a pretty decent ultimate as well, and if people do walk through the walls or they get flayed through them, they will take a bunch of damage if they are the first target and be slowed. So he is a champion that shines in offensive situations, but he also shines defensively as well. If his allies are caught in bad positions, he can simply throw his lantern forward and they can take it back to him and escape that situation. This is one of the reasons Thresh is so good at the moment, because his allies can play a lot more offensively than they usually would, because if Thresh is positioned properly and he is around them, he can just pull them out if things go bad. Therefore, as long as Thresh is around, they can go for much riskier plays, because if things do turn bad, at least they can get pulled to safety. All of these abilities that are great in offensive situations are also great defensively as well. If somebody does jump on top of one of your squishy carries, not only do you have this lantern, but you can flay them off of them, hook them to crowd control them a little bit longer, or of course just drop your ultimate for its slow. Like I said, Thresh has an incredibly strong kit, and in the right hands, I would say Thresh is the best support champion in all of League. And that covers who I think are the top 5 supports to learn in Preseason 9. There are of course other support champions that are fantastic at the moment, like say Braum or Morgana, but in this list I chose champions that can usually affect the game a lot more than those typical support champions. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Do you guys agree with who I put in the top 5, and if not, who do you think I should have put in the spot that they're in? But with that said, thanks again guys, I really do appreciate it. Take it easy, have a good day, and peace.